to do with the size of the person. It has to do with the length of the upper arm. If the upper arm is short, clearly you have to bring yourself to a level where again the elbow will be on the same level as the keys. If you have a very long upper arm that extends all the way down, the chair will have to come up. Whatever it is, you have to end up with an elbow that extends like on a straight plane this way. Now, if I'm sitting up, immediately, if we're talking about unifying all the parts and feeling that we can rest down and give the fingers the support of the hand and the forearm, when we sit up and play. So very often, people, what they do, they'll bring some hand support behind the fingers, and when you do that, you already have a break in the wrist. There's a break in the unit. It doesn't have to be much. It's enough to break even a little bit. The moment it doesn't feel unified, it's a break, even if it's a very small break. So when you bring this down, it breaks the unity. Also, the weight of the arm falls into the wrist, and that's one of the main reasons for wrist pain and carpal tunnel syndrome, the low wrist. Also, the feeling is that you're falling off the keyboard, so the fingers begin to clench and to grab and to hang on to the keys, and that creates tightness.
The wrist is low, which means that the weight of the arm is falling into the wrist and not getting over to the fingers. And the arm has to do a lot of work to really falling off the piano. In other words, automatically, when the wrist is low and the weight falls here, if you just relax the least little bit, the hand is going to fall off the keyboard. So it's extremely important that we level off the wrist. Let me see if I can get her to begin to do that a little bit. Can you imitate me? I want you to watch. I want you to make believe that the hand and the arm is like a road going onto a bridge. Now, if you have a car riding here and this falls down, what's going to happen to the car? Psh, right off the bridge, right? I want you to pretend that the road has to be perfectly straight here. Let me see you put your hand here. We don't want the car to fall off. Mustn't fall off here, right? Can you try to play like that a little bit in both hands? Let's see if you can try. I bet you can. Let me see you do that. You see? The attempt is there. Go ahead. Go ahead. Remember, we don't want the car to fall down. Yes. Now, one thing that's hampering it is that let me take your hand. I'll make it easier for you. If your elbow is up like that, the wrist has to fall down. The elbow is a hinge, you see. If we do want this, the elbow comes down a little bit. You see that? It's either going to be this or it's going to be this. See? So let's see if we can keep this down a little bit and keep the wrist up a little higher. Would you try that again? See, the left hand undermines it too. So what I would do in the beginning in training her is to put my hand there to give her the sensation. She doesn't have the sensation what it's like to hold the wrist up. So that's a very important thing that I would work on if I were to teach.
Now, when we talk about the positions and movement of fingers, I mentioned before something about curling the fingers. And I'll make a distinction between curling, which is negative, and curving, which is just the normal curve of the fingers.
Welcome to a new video tutorial on pianocareeracademy.com. Today I'm going to share with you one of the most powerful secrets of the Russian piano school that will bring magic to your performance and will help you to create a convincing illusion. It's the expressive technique called piano intonation or intoning on the piano, and I'm going to explain how exactly you can use it for creating the illusion of a smoother legato, a better phrasing, and actually making the piano sing. In the Russian piano school, we believe that the piano can imitate any instrument. Yes, it can be as percussive as the snare drum if needed. But at the same time, it can be as expressive as the violin. As the cello or the flute. Sing like the human voice.
Мопс символизует эту самую штучку. Гугиказион. Ну-ка, что ты?
makes string or wind instruments so expressive is the fact that performers can maintain the sound on the same intensity level, or even make crescendo while holding a certain note for as long as their bow or their breath allows. This is the foundation of a smooth, expressive legato, because these instruments can play 2, 3, 10 or more notes on the same level without any gaps, making the transfers between notes almost unnoticeable, this way creating an objective real legato. Because as you well know, legato is that articulation effect that allows us to play several notes on an uninterrupted line, really well connected, really smoothly, so there will be no gaps between these notes. Unfortunately, it's impossible to create on the piano a real objective legato. Yes, I'm serious, and now I'm going to explain why, and then I'm going to show you how the intoning technique can help you to create the illusion that you're actually making an objective legato. So, on the piano, we cannot hold a note objectively on the same intensity level after the sound has been produced. This is because the piano is basically a hammer and string instrument. After the hammer hits the string, the sound will inevitably fade away. Yes, even if we press the sustain pedal. You see, the sound goes away, and the first initial impulse, the first level of the sound intensity is gone. For this reason, playing legato on the piano actually means creating an illusion. First, let's see what really happens when we play legato. If we want to connect two notes, then when we press the second note, the first one is already partially faded, and there will be a gap between these two sounds. The slower the tempo, the more obvious this gap will be. So how can we overcome this problem and go beyond the objective physical construction of the piano? Here is when the intoning technique comes to our rescue. It helps us to create the audible and visual illusion of legato, and now I'm going to share with you 7 very easy yet very powerful tips that will change for good the quality of your piano playing, making it smooth, flowing, expressive and singing. As I mentioned in almost all my tutorials, the foundation of a correct professional piano playing habit is the whole arm action principle. Playing from the entire relaxed weight of our arms, and not by taking the needed force only from the fingers like this. Besides protecting us from tension, pain and hand injuries, this technique also allows us to create a deep, beautiful piano sound. Compared to the shallow percussive sound that comes out of the instrument when we strike the keys only with our fingers. Now I'm going to demonstrate the same passage from Chopin's Concert No. 1 in an incorrect manner. Can you see the difference? And now I'm playing with my arm. Let's not forget that the piano keys are rather heavy, and this is the main reason why we have to be smart and use the entire weight of our relaxed arm for depressing the key without making any effort, instead of overworking our poor fingers alone, this way causing tension here in the forearm muscles in the wrist, which will result in hand injuries. When we press a key in a gradual manner, what we're doing is actually softening the hammer action, making the contact between the hammer and the string lose its harshness. This technique, along with playing from our entire arms, takes us one step closer to a beautiful legato, being another pillar of the intoning technique.
Очень хорошо, очень хорошо.
Keep your wrist loose and relaxed. A flexible wrist has double benefits. It protects us from pain, which happens when we play in a tensed manner with immobile joints, and it also softens some more the key attack, making the sound more vibrant and noble. On the other hand, if you keep your wrist immobile, your sound will still have a certain harshness to it, and it will be very, very difficult to make legato having such a sound as your building material. So no matter what you play, keep your wrist as flexible and relaxed as possible. And please don't forget about your shoulders and your elbows. Keep your shoulders down, relaxed, and your elbows in a wider position, not too close to your side, because this wide position will allow you, let's say, to fly and to feel extremely free when playing. I'm putting so much emphasis on all these details of a correct posture and a correct key attack, because if we want to build a correct piano playing skill, we have to start by setting the foundation. This way you'll actually save time and effort, because if you will practice in an incorrect manner, with an incorrect key attack, with a detrimental posture, then it will be very difficult for you to master the intoning technique and to create the beautiful legato that we're talking in today's video tutorial. The technique, which is called the walking arm, is another efficient secret of the Russian piano school, being yet another brick in building the illusion of legato. Let's make a comparison. Now I'm going to play by raising one finger at a time without involving arm weight, as most beginners unfortunately do nowadays. This is the melody from Chopin's Nocturne in D flat major. Even if the notes seem to be connected, they still sound somehow separated, because each note is played on a separate movement, on a separate impulse, you see. And now I'm playing by connecting several notes on a single movement, transferring the weight of my arm from one finger into the next one. This principle is similar to walking and transferring the weight of your body from one leg into the other. In our case, from one finger into the other. That's why it's called the walking arm. It instantly smoothens the transitions between notes and minimizes the gaps, this way reinforcing the illusion of legato. I try to create the impression that each consecutive note is a continuation of the previous one, as if it flows from the previous note, as if it's born from it, so to speak. When you play in this manner, you have to have the feeling that you push yourself from the keys with each finger, instead of simply lowering each finger towards the key. I hope you can hear the difference. There is lots of relaxed pressure involved in this technique, and it helps us to create a deep, beautiful and professional piano sound. And now the cherry on the cake, the last technical element of the intoning technique, the one behind its name. This technique works like magic, especially in melodies that have large intervals. That's why we call it the intoning technique, because it is similar to the technique used by singers to make the transfers between two notes situated at a certain distance to sound smooth, as if the second note is a natural continuation of the first one. Now I'm going to give you an example from the famous prelude in E minor by Chopin, because here we have a melody that is built on large intervals. And now I'm going to show you how to use horizontal wrist navigation for creating the illusion of legato and smooth transitions between notes. This technique is also called wrist anticipation, because we anticipate with our flexible wrist the texture of the melody, its layout. If the melody goes up, as if in this case, the wrist goes up first, as if taking the fingers with it, placing the fingers in the needed position in a very relaxed, flowing manner. This gesture instantly makes the second hammer lose the harshness of its attack, and we have the illusion that these two notes are played on a very flowing legato. But of course, this gesture has to be based on all the other elements that I shared with you until this moment. Whole arm action, gradual diving key attack, flexible wrist, transferring the weight of the arm from one note into the other, and using this wrist anticipation, this horizontal wrist navigation for softening the transfers between notes, just like a good singer would do. What happens if we play two notes on the same intensity level by applying the same amount of pressure, the same amount of arm weight? For example, I'm playing two notes now on the same intensity level without using the intoning technique. Because the first one has already faded, when we play the second one with the same sound intensity, it actually will sound louder, because its volume will create a contrast to the previous fading note. I agree, this is very annoying, playing two notes on the same intensity level and creating the impression that actually the second note is played louder. However, if we're smart, we can use this annoying particularity of the piano mechanism to our advantage. Listen to the fading of the first note and match the second note to the same volume level, like this, by using the intoning technique. Guess what happens in this case? Both notes will sound equal, even if the second one is much softer than the first one. But your hearing will perceive a smooth, perfect legato. Even if you follow to the letter all the tips that I just shared, you won't be able to master the intoning technique unless you activate your inner hearing and your imagination. Instead of pressing the keys one at a time, like this, and waiting for what will come out of the instrument, you have to imagine the phrase first in your mind, just like I described in my report A New Perspective on Piano Phrasing. Your mind should always be ahead of your fingers, anticipating their movement. Mental anticipation, imagining the entire phrase before actually playing it, this is the most important element of the intoning technique, the one that guides all the other elements and makes them work together for creating the illusion of legato. In the end, let's not forget that the intoning technique itself is not our main purpose. Our purpose is to bring out the entire expressive potential of a certain melody, to make a convincing phrasing, and this way to share the beauty of the piece with the audience. And the intoning technique is a wonderful means to this end. Just like any other type of piano technique, intonation cannot be mastered overnight. It requires some practice and some patience, but its fascinating effects are totally worth the time and the effort. When you practice a piece, focus on the beauty of the sound as well, and not only on the technical difficulties. Listen carefully to the quality of your legato, to the continuity of your phrasing, and also monitor your gestures. Polish both, one little fragment at a time, sometimes even one transition at a time, until your mind and your muscle memory learn how to create this new effect. Then, as the days go by and you become more experienced, the intoning technique will become an inseparable part of your pianistic skills, being as natural as breathing and requiring less and less practice. And now a short conclusion. Today we learned all the little details of the special expressive technique used in the Russian piano school that is called piano intonation. For making the piano sing and creating a convincing illusion of legato and a better phrasing, play with your entire arms. Make sure that your key attack is deep and gradual. Keep your wrists and your elbows relaxed and flexible. Transfer the weight of your arm from note to note. Use the wrist navigation technique for anticipating and softening the transition between notes. Imagine the phrase before actually playing it, and of course go to the instrument and put into practice everything you have learned. I'll remind you that the learning happens when the fingers start moving and when we put into practice all the new information that we have just discovered. And one more thing, piano intonation is not a technique for advanced students. It can be mastered by beginners as well, from the very moment you guys learn what legato is and how it should be played. The sooner you learn how to play flowingly, you see, this is very easy. With a beautiful sound, the better. And now a little advice. Beware of tension, no matter if we talk about the intoning technique or generally about your piano practice. Sometimes we get tensed not simply because our posture is incorrect. We get tensed because we try too much. And in these moments we simply have to let go and make sure that relaxation comes first, and then comes the beautiful sound, and then comes the technical accuracy. If we structure our priorities like this, in fact, we'll progress much faster. And will not simply progress from a technical point of view, we'll actually become real pianists, expressing something with our playing and enjoying our practice, which is probably the most important thing of all. Also, don't be discouraged if you don't see dramatic results from the very first attempt. Rome was not built in one day. Be persistent, believe in yourself, and have fun learning the intoning technique, making the piano sing and playing with flow and ease like a true professional. My name is Ilinka Vartik. Thank you for watching this video, and if you want to discover more exclusive piano playing tips, join my piano coaching program at pianocareeracademy.com by clicking on the link in the description box below and have instant access to hundreds of other detailed piano playing tutorials that reveal the secrets of the Russian piano school and my holistic approach on piano playing and lifestyle. Also, don't forget to send me your questions and your comments, because I'd love to hear about the results that you're getting from implementing the information that I shared with you. Take care, enjoy your practice, and I'll see you really soon. Bye bye! Hi everyone, and welcome to another video tutorial on pianocareer.com. Now I'm going to answer Alexandra's question about descending movement in playing scales. Again, let's take an easy example and play the descending movement with the right hand in C major. You said that when you play the descending movement, the first position played with the fifth, fourth, third and second finger, it goes faster than the remaining notes, especially after this position shift. What happens in your case? Of course, if we keep our hand like this, and if this is the most simple thing in the world to play like this, it's really easy and any beginner can do it, because all we have to do is slightly move our fingers. You see, now I'm playing only from my fingers, not involving the rest of my arm, not involving my wrist, not involving my shoulders. So you see this kind of playing, of course, it's easier to play this, and then the remaining notes go slower. You see, I can't even play without mistakes such a descending movement. On the other hand, if you practice by using the entire weight of your arm into each finger, then you find stability, and only by finding stability you can play all the notes in a certain passage evenly, exactly, avoiding playing one note longer, another shorter. So this is how we have to practice. When I play like this, the entire weight of my arm is transferred from one finger into the other. So each finger carries the same, let's say, weight. I'm not sure how much weight, but it's the same amount of weight. So I will demonstrate again in a slow motion. It's difficult to explain this feeling of having the weight coming from your back and your shoulder, but I hope that you can see the difference. This is the incorrect way. Of course, we can use such a technique in certain pieces. I don't know, for example. Okay, even playing these passages, I'm really relaxed, but I'm not using this like... This is, if I remember correctly, this is a passage from a Greek sonata for violin and piano. But this is another case. When playing scale, we have to make sure that all the position shifts are comfortable. And for this... So you see, even when I increase the tempo, it's still extremely comfortable to play this kind of motion. You also said in your reply that your pinky tends to lift up during fast passages or when you play in a fast tempo. Let me tell you a secret. I used to have the same problem up until I met my second piano teacher. As I already mentioned in several of my articles, I had two piano teachers. One during my childhood years and the other during my academy years, when I went, let's say, to college, as you say in America. Here we have like the academy or the university. When I was little, I was playing a little bit like this, keeping my elbows and my hands closer to my body and not being as flexible. I still had a very good small technique, but I couldn't control the entire expressive possibilities of the piano. So when I went to the academy, my second piano professor, she taught me, she basically changed my posture at the piano. She told me to sit with my back even straighter and to place my elbows a little bit farther from the body, but not too far. And she taught me how to control the quality of the sound by using this kind of leverage that comes from the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, as I always write in my articles, because these are the basic principles of the Russian piano school. My first teacher was mostly inspired from the Western tradition. She had amazing results as well, but unfortunately this kind of approach cannot make you feel entirely free and comfortable at the instrument, and it cannot allow you to play, let's say, something really big, really, for example, Rachmaninoff or Tchaikovsky, that requires power, and at the same time allowing you to keep the quality of the sound, to keep it deep, expressive, and even making cantabile on really complicated, loud passages. So why am I telling you all this? Is because when I used to play in this modest position, my pinky used to lift up as well all the time. And when I met my second teacher, she said, "Look at your finger." She was always trying to make it relax, and she was always saying, "Your pinky should look at the keys, not at the lid of the piano." But at the same time, she wasn't pressing me to solve this problem. She knew that after playing for a year, 2 or 3 in a more relaxed, more comfortable position, my pinky will relax as well, and it will slowly return to this comfortable position. Now, from time to time, especially when I play something really difficult, I notice that my pinky tends to lift up as well, but not as often as before. So in my opinion, this is not such a big problem. It will not affect the quality of your playing, and in time, if you learn to play with really relaxed hands, you'll notice slowly that your pinky returns to the keyboard and is looking downward as it's supposed to do. So yes, this problem is connected to your posture and to your playing habit, especially the fact that you're probably used to play from your fingers, not from the entire arm. You also asked me about achieving speed in the pieces that you play. As I already told you, I always had a very good small technique. But when I met my second teacher, she also showed me how to have a very good, brilliant technique by feeling comfortable at the instrument and by playing with relaxed arms. Let me demonstrate how I used to practice Bach's Chromatic Fantasy, which I played several years ago in a concert. How I practiced it in order to achieve the deep sound that is necessary for playing Bach, and at the same time achieve a really fast technique. The beginning of the Chromatic Fantasy goes like this. So when I practiced this fragment, I was playing first, as I already told you, on portamento with relaxed arms, allowing each finger to go deeply into the keyboard. Then I would play the same thing in a slow tempo, but on legato. And slowly I would reach that necessary tempo that will allow me to play this piece as it should be played. I'm not saying that you should practice slowly all the time. I'm saying that you should practice slowly until you feel that relaxation in your arms and your wrists. Then, when you feel comfortable, of course, you have to increase the tempo and even practice in a medium tempo for some time, but don't play too fast for too long, because fast motion tends to have 2 negative consequences. The first one is the fact that it tenses our wrist, and the second one, it makes us lose the objective perception of what we're playing. So we begin to play mechanically, automatically, and in most cases, we lose that even quality of the passages. So ideally, you should combine slow practice with practice in a medium tempo and with fast practice. And when you combine and you reach this golden middle, only then you can have really nice results. But playing only fast before feeling relaxed, before understanding how your hands and your piano should work together, this is like trying to, I don't know, swim 100 kilometers before even learning how to swim. This is another fragment that I want to show you from the same Chromatic Fantasy written by Bach. So I can play this fast, but at first, this is how I practice. Notice that even when I play, this is demonstration of a legato practice. Even when I play in a slow tempo, I still try to make a beautiful legato. I don't play like this, as you can see many beginners doing. I try to play very relaxed, but with a beautiful legato. This is achieved by allowing the weight of the fingers to be, the weight of the arm to be transferred from one finger to another. And so on. Okay, good. Now I remembered about the Schumann piece you were studying. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly in German, so I just call it the blind man's buff. And I will show you now how to practice this piece on portamento. It's good that I remembered. Gradually you increase the tempo. And you can notice that as I increase the tempo, my movements of the wrist become smaller. So I don't do like this anymore, which I did in the beginning. In time, when you increase the tempo, it will be really comfortable for you to play faster. So as you can see, first I'm playing slowly, making sure that each finger goes deeply into the keyboard, this way memorizing its place. And then gradually, when I increase the tempo, I also lighten my touche. And this way it's easier to reach that needed fast tempo without straining your wrist. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye bye!
Не знаю, сразу же. Наоборот.
Vika Vartik and welcome to a new video tutorial on pianocareeracademy.com. Today we are going to talk about piano technique, and I'm going to share with you the main principles of the professional approach used in the Russian piano school and also by great concert pianists from the entire world. Unfortunately, these powerful principles are slowly becoming lost nowadays because of our modern fast food mentality and our constant hurry to learn everything as quick as possible. I must warn you though that in this video you will not find magical formulas that will make your hands lightning fast overnight, or special finger exercises or any other mechanical tricks that could transform you into a virtuoso in only several days or months. So if you're unhappy with your piano skills, if you struggle with clumsiness, tension and hand injuries, with speed walls, wrong notes, lack of coordination and so on, and you think that all these problems have mechanical solutions, that it's only about the action of your muscles, then it's time for a complete change of perspective, and this is the purpose of today's video. You will see the art of piano playing from a different angle. You will discover the bigger picture, where all the elements of the puzzle fit together and finally make sense. You will learn how professional piano playing really works, why great pianists play so brilliantly, and what you have to do in order to see a massive transformation in your own playing. And we will simultaneously debunk some of the most common myths and stereotypes about technique and expression that simply do not work, but unfortunately are too widely spread nowadays and cause a lot of confusion. I also have to mention that most ideas that I will share today are not invented by me. They date back to Frédéric Chopin's teaching, being used with great success by many professionals from the entire world. I learned them from my own wonderful teachers during more than 20 years of intense studies, and today I want to combine them into a comprehensive and well-structured system for all of you, which will hopefully offer you clarity in case you have heard some of these ideas before, or if you haven't, that you'll have a big revelation, discover a whole new wonderful world you never even knew existed, and start making some awesome progress. This video is actually inspired from your questions, from all the comments and emails I get on a daily basis, from my YouTube subscribers, and also from our prospective students at pianocareeracademy.com, who tell me that their main purpose at the moment is to improve their technique, and they ask me if they will find useful tutorials on this topic on our site. The short answer is yes, of course they will. However, this unilateral approach is not entirely correct or efficient. Before explaining why, I will mention that technique is indeed very important and nobody can deny this. If you practice correctly, in the manner that I'll describe in a moment, you will take your technical skills to a whole new level, discovering and mastering important ergonomic professional principles such as whole-arm action and weighted playing, correct key attack and sound production, how to combine arm and wrist relaxation and freedom with hand and finger strength, wrist flexibility, navigation and anticipation, and you will certainly develop your technical power and endurance, your dexterity and velocity, your coordination and accuracy, the technical freedom, stability, comfort and control, and this list can go on and on. These principles, together with lots of correct practice, will help you to play in a fluid, free, tensionless manner, without clumsiness and rigidity, without hand injuries and all the other frustrating limitations created by an incorrect playing habit and a poor technique. However, in order to become a really good pianist and musician, you need to understand the bigger picture, the complex art of piano.
Нет, наоборот, был. Здорово. Так еще как все равно, здорово. Здорово. Так меня пришло. Чайный. Чайный. Видяйный. Не видяйный. Видяйный. Да. На свой мед. Что-то холодно уже, что-то стало на улице. Что такое? Откуда у меня такое? А, ну это рэпер русский, все говорят тогда. Ой, пол-12 год. Вот это и есть. Мама, я не знаю. Double thirds. Нет, наоборот. Не делай, да? Что написано? Нет, нам что-то написала свои цифры? Нет, ну вот это истина. А, ты не даришь, что ли? Нет. Что там? В чем проблема? Да, да, да.
Du willst Deutsch lernen, aber kannst nicht so...
Hi everyone, this is Josh with Josh Wright Piano TV. Today I am going to present a concept that intimidates me a lot. Music festivals, and I got advice from a lot of different people, and even though I still haven't perfected everything that they've taught me,
Дрон — это дрон. Нету, понимаешь?
Hi, and welcome to a video about Monte Carlo simulations, a type of simulation that I really enjoy because it's a super simple concept, and watching this video you will know exactly what Monte Carlo simulations are and what types of problems you can solve with them. And in the context of simulations, Monte Carlo is basically used as a synonym for randomness, like the randomness in gambling. So Monte Carlo simulations are simulations evolving randomly. And this might seem counterintuitive at first, because how can something useful come out of a randomly evolving simulation? But we will see why randomness can be actually very useful in a simulation in just a moment. So let's take a look at a first table and drops marbles. And on the table there are two bowls, one with a square cross-section and one with a circular cross-section. And each of these bowls is placed on some sort of scale, which displays how many marbles are in each bowl at this time. And if we let this simulation evolve for a while, and then divide the number of marbles in the circular bowl by the number of marbles in the square bowl, the result happens to be roughly pi. Without any advanced math knowledge, simply by randomly dropping marbles into two bowls, estimate pi. Okay, so let's unpack what happened in this simple example of a Monte Carlo simulation. When we drop a marble in a uniformly random location, then the probability for this marble to end up in one of the bowls is proportional to the bowl's cross-section area. And if we repeat this process over and over again, then also the number of marbles ending up in this bowl will be proportional to the bowl's cross-section area. The area of the square bowl in this example is its edge length a squared, and the area of the circular bowl is pi times a squared. And that's how we get pi as the fraction of the two areas, and consequently as the fraction of marbles in each bowl. So in this example of a Monte Carlo simulation, we essentially determine an area by taking random samples. With each random sample, we probe whether this specific location is inside or outside of some area. And by taking enough samples, we get a good idea of how big an area is. This idea of obtaining random samples is probably quite familiar to you if you think about how real-world studies are designed. Let's say we wanted to find out the average height of all people worldwide. Then, in principle, we would need to measure the height of each person worldwide and then take the average to get an accurate result. But of course we can't go out and measure the height of billions of people. So what can we do? Well, we can measure the height of some smaller group of people and hope that their average height is a good estimate for the average height of all people worldwide. But there are two things that we need to consider. Firstly, the selection of the group of people needs to be unbiased. We can't just measure the height of the next 5 people we meet, as we might live in an area with especially tall or short people. A better way to get an unbiased sample group would be to randomly select people worldwide. Randomness helps us to make an unbiased selection. And secondly, the group of measured people must not be too small. If we only measure the height of, let's say, 5 people, we might have just coincidentally picked 5 taller or shorter people. And we can be more and more confident about the average height the more people we measure. In probability theory, this is called the law of large numbers, which essentially states that an average tends to come closer to its expected value the more samples we have. And the exact same is also true for Monte Carlo simulations. The core idea of a Monte Carlo simulation is that we can get an unbiased representative group of sample height accurately. And instead we can rely on random. The value is fluctuating heavily, but with more and more samples generated by the randomly evolving simulation, the fluctuations become smaller and smaller, and we can see that the fraction approaches the expected value pi. Now, I hope that using a Monte Carlo simulation to determine pi was an illustrative Carlo simulation light in virtually any direction. So let's say we want to find out how much light hits this marked area. It's impossible to follow all the possible light paths. So what can we do if we can't follow all possible paths? Well, I hope that after watching the video to this point, the answer is quite obvious. If we can't simulate all possible light paths, then the best we can do is to simulate a representative group of sample paths.
이렇게 되어 있어요.
Be talking about a very important movement that we make at the piano, and it's known as the drop roll, sometimes called the drop roll slur. But before we get on to that, let's just look a little bit at positions of the wrist in general, because there's a lot of differences of opinion about the wrist in piano playing, a lot of argument going on about where exactly it should be. The default position will be so that the wrist is level with the rest of the arm, so that there's an unbroken line between the back of the hand and the arm, and my arm is more or less parallel with the ground. Now, there is a little bit of leeway here. We're not always going to be in that fixed position. We can raise the wrist higher, and we can go down lower, but normally we want to avoid dropping the wrist and playing with fixed fingers like this, what I call piston fingers. This is really bad for piano technique in general, because I'm pulling here. If I play like this, I'm pulling on the tendons that go from here up to my arm, and that's going to cause me injury. It's seriously not a good idea. So, general playing position, level. When we do drop down, and I'm going to show you this in the drop roll, it's normally a part of a continuous movement that will come back up again. So I'm talking about avoiding a fixed position with a low wrist. There are some occasions, and the rotary trill, if I show you a rotary trill between 1 and 3, do you notice there my wrist is quite low? But I could go on all day doing that without any tension, because it's not actually pulling on anything. I'm using a rotary movement of my forearm. There are occasions when we do want to have a high wrist. I'm going to show you the last movement of a little bit of the last movement of Schumann's Papillon, where I will want my wrists quite high to make a kind of brassy sound. Straight fingers, high wrist, and certainly no give in the wrist. I don't want any springiness in my wrist here. So tonally speaking, what that does, it gives me a bright edge to my sound. Let's look a little bit at how the wrist moves. There are two ways the wrist moves. One is up and down like this, like a hinge, and the other is side to side laterally. We're going to look at this in a little bit of detail now, but let me just clear up one misunderstanding about the wrist. I've heard it said wrist rotation, as though the wrist itself rotates. It may look like my wrist is rotating when I do this, but the rotation actually comes from the forearm here. So some people call it wrist rotation, just in case you're wondering why, because it actually looks like the wrist is working, but it's coming from further back. Now, the lateral movement is really important for lining up the fingers in 5-finger positions. So if I take just a regular 5-finger position, I think you'll be able to see my right hand very clearly here. This is how we want to do it. Did you notice there what I'm doing? I'm not isolating my fingers from my hand. Let me do it wrong, just to show you. Again, piston fingers, fixed wrist, fixed arm, really not a good idea. What I do is I line up my arm behind each finger that plays, using the lateral movement of the wrist. Let me show you that in a piece. This is the Bach Musette from the Anna Magdalena. you see what's happening there? So even though I'm using my fingers quite actively because I want that bright, brilliant sound, I'm finding that what I need to do is to be free with that lateral movement, to enable that lateral movement. And my wrist is really loose here, really loose when I do that. Let me just give you an example from the middle section of the Grieg Nocturne, where you will see I have to use this lateral movement of my wrist, or else I simply wouldn't be able to manage it. Let me just play you a little bit of it first. Let me just go through that a little bit slower so that you can see what I'm doing. What I'm doing here is finding a position where, when I drop on 5 and 3, my wrist and my arm are in one line. If I were to do that with the next pair of notes, there would be a different alignment. There would be a different alignment between 1 and 3. So my job, my wrist's job, is to move between those 3 positions. And you may say, well, that's all very well, but I can see your arm moving as well. Yes, because this is all one unit. And what we want to do in advanced piano playing, even not advanced piano playing, basic piano playing as well, is to make sure that we're not switching off our arm and using our fingers in this way. So I'm moving through my arm, through my wrist, and there's a smaller movement going on up here, bigger movements happening down there. So that's the Grieg Nocturne. I'm going to show you an example of a piece of music. It happens to be by Ibert, Jacques Ibert, and it's called The Little White Donkey. And the left hand here looks like a really good example of wrist staccato. Let me show you a little bit of the left hand. Do you see what's going on in my left hand there? Wrist, what looks like wrist staccato. It is wrist staccato, but like in so much of piano playing, it's a blend of the fingertip with the wrist. And notice again, I'm using my lateral adjustments. If I were to fix my hand in one place and just use my wrist, I'm feeling tension. Tension we don't need. So in order for me not to be tense, I'm noticing, I'm sensing, I've got one position here. Here, slightly different. I'm noticing, I'm sensing, I've got one position here, slightly different alignment, and a different alignment here. So rather like my Grieg 3 positions, I've got 3 positions here. And as I bounce my wrist with a firm finger, I move through those 3 positions, and that keeps me free, focused, loose. Let me leave that one and just talk a little bit about, well, I actually have talked about the causes of RSI, or repetitive strain, which is the low wrist. So just to remind you again, don't play with a low wrist, with a dropped wrist. There are a couple of examples that I can give you of the fixed wrist, but I think what I'll do is I'll leave that, just tell you that there are occasions in piano playing where we do want to have the wrist firm. What I've got there is a solid wrist, not stiff, not tight, but firm, as you might call it, braced. Let's get to the whole arm roll, and then I will get to the drop roll. The whole arm roll, just take any chord you like. I'm going to take a diminished 7th chord. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it with my hand and move the upper arm forwards and backwards. And what you'll see is the wrist rising and falling. And you'll also sense that there's a, if I exaggerate it, there's a sliding movement in and out. That is the whole There are occasions in piano playing where we do want to have the wrist firm. What I've got there is a solid wrist, not stiff, not tight, but firm, as you might call it, braced. Let's get to the whole arm roll, and then I will get to the drop roll. The whole arm roll, just take any chord you like. I'm going to take a diminished seventh chord. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it with my hand and move the upper arm forwards and backwards. And what you'll see is the wrist rising and falling. And you'll also sense that there's a, if I exaggerate it, there's a sliding movement in and out. That is the whole arm roll, where the arm, wrist and hand act as one unit. Now let me move now to the drop roll, which is where, again, we use the whole arm roll to grip a key. Let me just go down into a key, grip with a finger, and I'm going to come up with my upper arm and move forwards and backwards. Do you see the movement there? Down and then up, but it's not just up, it's up and back. And that we can, if we do that with a float up, I get a very soft ending. So strong, weak, perfect for appoggiaturas. If I do it with a kick off or a spring off, I'm going to get an accent on the last note. It could be 2 or 3 notes. There's a drop roll between 3 notes with a float off. There's the kick off, which of course gives you an accent. Now, we can use the drop roll when we're teaching beginners to play legato. The very first thing we're going to do is to drop roll between 2 and 3 for legato. And again, you notice I'm going down and then coming back up again. One continuous movement. And for beginners, between 2 and 3, then between 3 and 4, 3 and 4, 4 and 5, and then we can start using 3 notes and then 4 notes. So that's the drop roll for beginners. Let's look at how we might use an example of Mozart. This is the Fantasia in D minor. Here it comes. I'm making a bit of a meal of it, but what I'm doing is drop, roll, and releasing upwards out of the second note of my slur, which gives me a soft, faded, tapered ending. Let's look at an example of the drop roll now, where we don't actually release the keyboard, but I release here in my wrist. I'm actually not going to use that example. I've got a better one that's just occurred to me, and that is the G-flat impromptu of Schubert. Let me just show you now what I'm going to do in slow motion. I'm dropping into the first note. Let's just dissect that a little bit. Drop here, come up here, very slowly,